If I told you even the most brilliant math minds had declared it impossible. Those were the words that echoed through the grand hall of Crestview University. An unsolvable problem, an elite symposium, and then, "I think I have something," spoke a quiet 12-year-old black boy named Malik from the back of the room. "The question is, how did a middle schooler end up challenging an entire academic institution, and what happened when the world started to take notice? You won't believe the twists in this true story of talent, injustice, and undeniable brilliance, so stick around till the very end." Dear viewer, if you are watching my story for the first time, I humbly request you write the location from where you are watching right now. Subscribe this channel and press the bell icon now not to miss the notifications of my daily published new stories. Thank you, and let's dive into the full story. It was the kind of late autumn morning that made the sprawling campus of Crestview University look almost otherworldly. The ivy-covered stone buildings stood like monuments to an age of tradition and privilege. Inside the grand marble halls of the mathematics department, the air was charged with quiet anticipation. Word had spread that the annual mathematics symposium was to feature an impossible problem, one that had stumped even the most brilliant minds. It was Professor Eleanor Whitmore herself, a 49-year-old celebrated mathematician with flowing blonde hair and icy blue eyes, who had declared it unsolvable. Purely theoretical, she had announced with a confident smile during her interview with the university's press team. But a fine exercise in humility for those who dare attempt it. Professor Whitmore's intellect was unquestioned. She held multiple doctorates and had lectured at universities across Europe and the U.S. Her publications were required reading for graduate students. Yet there was something else about her. An air of superiority that often veiled her interactions, particularly with those she deemed less prepared or out of place. Among the students and faculty, it was an open secret that she rarely entertained ideas from undergraduates, much less from the public. So, when the notice was posted an open invitation for anyone to attempt the problem, no one expected anyone but seasoned mathematicians and doctoral candidates to attend, and yet standing in the back of the crowded lecture hall, unnoticed at first, was a boy, a 12-year-old African-American student named Malik Jackson. He wore a neatly pressed white shirt, navy slacks, and black sneakers. His mother, an accountant who worked 2 jobs, had dropped him off at the campus early that morning with a lunch packed and a kiss on the cheek. Malik was not a university student. He was a 7th grader from Martin Luther King Middle School across town. But Malik wasn't just any student. He had an uncanny gift for mathematics. Numbers spoke to him in ways they didn't to others. Complex equations danced vividly in his mind, resolving themselves like familiar puzzles. He had overheard his math teacher, Mrs. Harris, mention the symposium and the so-called impossible problem. Intrigued, Malik convinced his mom to let him attend. Clutching a notebook filled with scribbled equations, he made his way into the imposing lecture hall of Crestview. The room was buzzing. Graduate students filled the seats, some hunched over laptops, others eagerly flipping through thick textbooks. A few of the more established mathematicians chatted in the front rows, all eyes on the stage. And then there was Professor Whitmore Wiggle, poised and impeccably dressed in a sharp gray suit. At exactly 9 o'clock, she approached the podium. Her voice, smooth and practiced, filled the room. "Welcome to the annual Crestview Mathematics Symposium. Today I present to you a problem that has eluded a solution for over 30 years. Even I," she allowed herself a small, knowing smile, "have declared it impossible to solve. Consider this an invitation to challenge your limits." With a dramatic flourish, she revealed the problem on the giant projector screen behind her. It was a beast of an equation, an intricate web of integrals, modular arithmetic, and number theory so dense it seemed almost alien. A hush fell over the room. Malik's eyes widened. He tilted his head slightly and began to read. To him the symbols didn't intimidate. They whispered. He could almost see pathways, possibilities. He scribbled furiously in his notebook, oblivious to the skeptical glances now directed his way. It didn't take long for some to notice him. A few of the graduate students began whispering, "Who's that kid? What's he doing here?" One particularly smug doctoral candidate, Trevor Langley, scoffed loudly. "Who let the middle school field trip in?" he jeered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. Malik heard him but didn't flinch. He kept writing, numbers streaming from his pen like water. Trevor sneered and leaned toward a colleague, like he's going to solve that. Even Whitmore called it impossible. At that, Professor Whitmore glanced up from the podium. Her icy gaze swept the room and settled momentarily on Malik. A faint arch of her brow, disapproval, amusement. Then she returned to her notes. Malik didn't care. The numbers were singing now. Patterns emerged. The impossible began to seem possible. But not everyone was content to let him be. During the mid-morning break, as attendees milled about, sipping coffee and debating the merits of various approaches, Professor Whitmore found herself surrounded by eager graduate students. Trevor, emboldened by her presence, leaned in. "Professor Whitmore, did you see the boy in the back?" he asked with a smirk. "He's trying to work on the problem." She allowed herself a small chuckle. "Oh, and how old is this prodigy?" "Couldn't be older than 12, Trevor replied. "He's from some middle school." A ripple of laughter spread among the group. Professor Whitmore shook her head, amused. "Well," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "mathematics is not a game for children. It is a discipline of rigor and maturity. I trust he will soon realize he is out of his depth." The others nodded in agreement. And yet, at the edge of the room, Malik continued to work, undeterred. The morning wore on, the lecture hall emptied for lunch, but Malik remained at his seat, deep in concentration. His pencil raced over the pages. A subtle shift had occurred. What had begun as curiosity was now determination. He would not be dismissed, not this time. By mid-afternoon, a few curious onlookers began to notice the growing pile of filled pages beside him. One of them, an assistant professor named Dr. Patel, approached and peered over Malik's shoulder. His eyes widened. "Incredible," he murmured under his breath. But before he could say more, Professor Whitmore called the room to order. The session was about to resume. As attendees filed back in, Malik gathered his notes. His heart pounded. He had seen something a way through the problem. It wasn't arrogance, it was certain. He would need to present it, and soon the entire room, including the dismissive Professor Whitmore, would see it too. The heavy double doors to the lecture hall swung shut as attendees returned to their seats. The energy in the room had shifted, more subdued now, laced with an undercurrent of anticipation. Professor Whitmore adjusted the microphone on the podium, her voice once again filling the grand space. "I trust you've all had a chance to consider the problem," she began, her tone laced with cool authority. "You are all discovering what appears simple on the surface quickly unravels into a labyrinth of impossibility." The audience chuckled politely. She glanced briefly toward the back row where Malik sat, still hunched over his notebook. For a flicker of a moment her eyes narrowed. "We shall now open the floor," she continued, "for any initial insights or attempts at solution. Be advised, only serious contributions, please." Her gaze lingered in Malik's direction as if to deliver an unspoken warning. Around the room, graduate students shuffled papers and exchanged uncertain glances. Trevor Langley, ever the opportunist, was first to rise. He strode toward the chalkboard with first confidence. "If I may, Professor Whitmore," he began. With a nod from the professor, he launched into an elaborate exposition, dense with jargon, light on clarity. His derivation meandered for nearly 10 minutes before collapsing into a familiar dead end. With a gracious smile, Professor Whitmore thanked him. "An admirable effort, Mr. Langley," she said with practiced diplomacy. "But as we see, the impasse remains." Several others followed, doctoral candidates, visiting mathematicians, all seasoned, all unsuccessful. Each failed attempt seemed to thicken the air with tension. Then, amid the lull that followed yet another failed derivation, a soft voice rose from the back. "Excuse me," Professor Whitmore called out, his voice steady but clear. Heads turned. Conversations hushed. I think I have something." A wave of incredulous murmurs swept the room. Trevor burst out laughing. "You've got something, kid. This isn't arithmetic homework," others smirked and whispered. Professor Whitmore's expression tightened. She adjusted her glasses and addressed him coolly. "Young man." "Malik, is it?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you believe you've made progress on this problem?" "Yes," Malik replied simply, holding up his thick stack of notes. Silence. Professor Whitmore paused, her lips pursed in thin disbelief. "Well," she said at last, voice dripping with condescension, We certainly encourage enthusiasm, but perhaps this exercise is better suited for more advanced practitioners. More chuckles. Malik's cheeks flushed, but he didn't shrink. He stood. I'd like to try, he said quietly. Dr. Patel, watching from the sidelines, suddenly rose. Professor Whitmore, he interjected, voice calm but firm, if I may. I had a look at the young man's notes. They are worth hearing. The room gasped softly. Even Professor Whitmore seemed momentarily caught off guard. She recovered quickly, her voice now tinged with irritation. Very well, she said curtly. If the young man insists, we shall indulge this curiosity, but let us be mindful of everyone's time. Trevor scoffed audibly. Malik made his way down the long aisle, his sneakers squeaking softly against the polished floor. He carried only his worn notebook and a pencil. Climbing the steps to the stage, he turned to face the imposing chalkboard. The room watched in taut silence. At the podium, Professor Whitmore crossed her arms, observing. Proceed, she said, her tone clipped. Malik opened his notebook to a bookmarked page. His voice steady, he began. The problem looks impossible because of the interaction between the nested modular forms and the nonlinear transformations, he said. But if you separate the coefficients using the transformation lemma here, he sketched a swift diagram on the board, the chalk gliding smoothly in his hand, you can reduce the system to a recursive sequence. Then, by applying this modified generating function, another set of equations followed, lines of logic unfurling clearly across the board. At first, the audience sat stunned, uncomprehending. But as Malik continued, piece by piece, something extraordinary happened. Whispers stilled, pens lifted, undeniable. Dr. Patel leaned forward, his mouth slightly open. A visiting professor from MIT began furiously scribbling notes. Even Trevor's smug expression had evaporated, replaced by growing unease. Finally, Malik arrived at the heart of it. And once the sequence converges, he said, the result simplifies to which out. A history struck the final line. A hush fell over the hall. The solution gleamed from the board, perfect, complete. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then an astonished voice rang out. He solved it. The words broke the spell. Murmurs rose into excited chatter. Dr. Patel stood beaming. This is remarkable, extraordinary. The visiting MIT professor nodded vigorously. Absolutely correct. This is a breakthrough. And at the center of it all stood Malik, his heart pounding, hands slightly trembling, but his eyes bright with certainty. Yet on the podium, Professor Whitmore remained frozen. Her face had paled. For a long moment she said nothing. Then, forcing a tight smile, she addressed the room. An unexpected contribution, she said, her voice strained. We will need to review these steps thoroughly before making any declarations. But the room no longer belonged to her. Students and professors crowded around Malik, peppering him with questions, marveling at his insight. Trevor slunk back into his seat, defeated. And as the boy looked around at the sea of astonished faces, he understood. He had done it. The problem wasn't impossible, not anymore, not to him. And for the first time, those who had dismissed him had no choice but to see him for what he truly was, a mathematician. The lecture hall was buzzing long after the session ended. Groups of mathematicians, grad students, and visiting professors clustered together, replaying what they had just witnessed. Some were still stunned into silence. Others debated excitedly, paging through Malik's notes and pointing animatedly at the equations he had scrawled across the board. Malik himself sat near the front, surrounded by a small circle of curious minds, Dr. Patel among them. The assistant professor's face glowed with admiration. You have a true gift, he said warmly. Where did you learn this technique? Malik shrugged shyly. I just saw it in the numbers. He tapped his notebook. I like to play with patterns and sequences when I have free time. The simplicity of his answer floored them. Here was a 12-year-old who had just dismantled a problem thought unsolvable for decades, and he spoke as though he'd been tinkering with a puzzle on a lazy afternoon. But not everyone was impressed. In the shadowed corner of the room, Professor Whitmore stood with several of her loyal graduate students. Her expression was unreadable, though beneath her polished veneer anger simmered. She had spent weeks building this symposium around the impossible problem, the problem she had declared unsolvable, and now? A middle schooler, an outsider, had cracked it in front of her esteemed colleagues. Trevor Langley, still nursing a bruised ego, sidled up to her. "It was probably a fluke," he said quietly, seeking validation. "Must have copied it from somewhere. There's no way—" Professor Whitmore cut him off with a sharp glance. "There is no published solution," she said icily. "It has never been formalized." Her gaze drifted back to Malik, now deep in conversation with the Métis professor. A sour taste filled her mouth, but the boy's method was intriguing. She inhaled slowly, steadying herself. "Regardless," she continued, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone, "this must be properly vetted, no hasty endorsements." Her students nodded, eager to echo her skepticism. Across the room, Malik's mother had arrived, drawn by the flurry of text from Mrs. Harris. She entered the hall, her eyes wide with uncertainty. Spotting her son at the center of so much attention, her expression softened into one of fierce pride. "Mama," Malik called, waving her over. Dr. Patel rose to greet her. "Ma'am," he said warmly, "your son has just done something extraordinary." "He's always been good with numbers," she replied, her voice thick with emotion, "but I never thought—" Before more could be said, Professor Whitmore approached, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. The crowd parted. Conversation stilled. "Maliki," she began, her tone measured but cool. "A most unexpected performance." Her gaze flickered toward his mother, assessing. "However, academic standards must be maintained. This solution will need thorough review before any formal recognition." Malik's mother straightened. "Are you saying he did something wrong?" she asked calmly. Whitmore's lips tightened. "I am saying that proper mathematical protocol must be observed. We cannot simply declare a breakthrough based on a child's enthusiasm." A tense silence followed. Dr. Patel frowned. "With respect, Professor, I have reviewed his derivation. It holds—" The MIT professor added firmly, "It is mathematically sound." The entire room witnessed it, but Whitmore remained unmoved. "Nevertheless," she said smoothly, "until it undergoes peer review, no premature conclusions. We must maintain academic integrity." Her words, though polite, rang with unmistakable condescension. The message was clear. Malik's achievement would not be allowed to eclipse her authority so easily. For the remainder of the afternoon, Malik and his mother lingered on campus. Dr. Patel introduced them to several other faculty members, some of whom offered praise, others guarded politeness. Malik noticed the difference. Some were genuinely excited, others less so. News of the event spread across campus. By evening, an unofficial write-up appeared on a university forum. "Local middle schooler solves impossible problem at Crestview Symposium." The post quickly gained traction, sparking both admiration and skepticism. "Probably staged," one commenter sneered. "No way a 12-year-old did that." Another chimed in. "Whitmore wouldn't let herself get upstaged like that." "Bet it gets buried." The backlash had begun. By the next morning, Malik returned to campus at Dr. Patel's invitation. They were to formally document his solution for submission to the department review board. But when they arrived at the mathematics department office, they were met with thin smiles and a cool reception. "I'm afraid the board is occupied with pressing matters today," the secretary informed them. "Perhaps you can return next week." Dr. Patel's brow furrowed. "That wasn't what we were told." Malik stood quietly beside him, notebook in hand. From down the hall, Professor Whitmore appeared, perfectly composed. "Dr. Patel," she said crisply, "I'm sure you understand we must proceed with caution. The faculty board will deliberate in due course. Meanwhile, I suggest young Malik enjoy his summer. He has ample time to pursue formal study before making further contributions." Her gaze swept over Malik, polite but dismissive. Dr. Patel stiffened. "He deserves to have his work recognized, of course," Whitmore replied with a thin smile. In time she turned and strode away, heels echoing in the hallway. The message couldn't be clearer. Malik was to wait, to be sidelined. And yet, as he left the department with Dr. Patel and his mother, Malik's heart burned, not with anger but determination. He wouldn't be silenced, not this time. He would prepare for the review, and when the time came there would be no doubt left, not even for Eleanor Whitmore. The tension was rising. The battle had only just begun. The ride home from Crestview was silent at first. Malik sat in the back seat of his mother's old Honda, notebook resting on his lap, gaze fixed out the window as the tree-lined streets of the university faded behind them. His mother glanced at him through the rear-view mirror, reading the tight set of his jaw and the stubborn glint in his eyes. She knew that look. He wasn't angry, not exactly. He was thinking, processing, and when Malik Jackson got that look, he wasn't going to let something go. "You okay, baby?" she asked gently. Malik blinked and turned toward her. "Yeah, Mama," he said softly. I don't think they want me to be right." His mother let out a slow breath, her grip on the steering wheel tightening. "You are right," she said firmly. "I saw it with my own eyes, and so did everyone in that room." Malik nodded but didn't reply. He knew what he saw. The numbers didn't lie. But he also knew that in certain rooms, being right wasn't always enough, especially for someone like him. The next day, Malik was back in his usual classroom at Martin Luther King Middle School. The walls were decorated with colorful posters of black scientists, inventors, and mathematicians. His math teacher, Mrs. Harris, greeted him with a huge smile. "There he is," she exclaimed, "our little celebrity." The other kids gathered around, bombarding him with questions. "Did you solve it? Was the professor mad? Are you going to be on TV?" Malik laughed quietly, shrugging off their attention. "I just did the math," he said simply, but the truth was the fire inside him hadn't dimmed. That evening, after dinner, Malik sat at the kitchen table with his notebook open and pages of fresh graph paper spread around him. His mom worked late most nights, but tonight she stayed close by, keeping him company as she sorted bills. "What are you working on now?" she asked. "Rewriting everything," Malik replied, without looking up. "Dr. Patel said if we can make it perfect, clear." He worked late into the night, refining every step, double-checking each calculation. For the next several days, Malik kept the same routine: school by day, math by night. Dr. Patel emailed him regularly, providing guidance and encouragement. "Be thorough," the professor advised. "Leave no room for doubt." Malik poured himself into the task. He drew clearer diagrams, explained every transformation, and added footnotes for definitions. With every revision, his proof grew stronger, more unassailable. But news from Crestview was less encouraging. Dr. Patel reported that Professor Whitmore was stalling. The faculty board had yet to schedule a formal review. Emails went unanswered. Hushed whispers circulated among the math department. Some professors were impressed by Malik's solution. Others, especially those loyal to Whitmore, dismissed it as a clever trick. On campus forums, skeptical posts continued. "Child prodigy. Doubtful. Probably spoon-fed by Patel. Let's see it pass a real review." Malik saw them all, and while they stung, they only strengthened his resolve. One afternoon, Dr. Patel invited Malik and his mother to a small cafe near campus. Over steaming mugs of cocoa, he shared the latest. "There's resistance," he said bluntly. "Some of them refuse to believe a 12-year-old could have done this." Malik's mother frowned. "Because he's 12 or because he's black?" Dr. Patel hesitated, then answered honestly. "Both, I suspect." Malik stayed quiet, absorbing the words. He wasn't naive. He'd seen the way Professor Whitmore had looked at him. He'd heard the whispers. "What do we do?" his mother asked. Dr. Patel smiled faintly. "We make the proof undeniable. I'll help you prepare a full submission, one that will be impossible to ignore. And when it's ready, I'll make sure the right people see it. Not just here at Crestview, but everywhere." Malik looked up, eyes sharp. "Okay," he said simply. "Let's do it." For the next 2 weeks, they worked together in earnest. After school, Malik met Dr. Patel at the university library. They pored over academic papers, polished terminology, and formatted every page to exacting standard. Malik absorbed everything: conventions, citation formats, and how to structure a formal academic proof. It was a crash course in advanced mathematics, but he rose to it effortlessly. The final document was no longer just a set of notes. It was a professional paper, ready for peer review. They titled it, "A Resolution to the Nested Modular Inversion Problem Using Recursive Generative Sequences." When Dr. Patel handed the printed copy to Malik one evening, his voice was warm with pride. "You've done something incredible," he said. "No matter what happens next, remember that." Malik smiled, a quiet confidence in his heart. "Thank you, Dr. Patel." But they both knew the battle wasn't over. Meanwhile, Professor Whitmore was not idle. Behind closed doors, she worked furiously to regain control of the narrative. In faculty meetings, she downplayed the boy's achievement. A promising intuition, she said. In emails to her peers, she sowed doubt. A review is premature. We must proceed cautiously, and in private, she prepared her paper, an analysis that would frame the problem as still unresolved, Malik's solution merely a novel approach needing more study. She would not allow her position to be undermined by a child, least of all by one from outside her academic circle. But even Whitmore couldn't stop the growing momentum. News of the symposium continued to stretching the attention of mathematicians beyond Crestview. A well-known math journal reached out to Dr. Patel. "We've heard intriguing reports. Would the student be willing to submit his proof for consideration?" When Malik heard, his heart pounded. "Yes," he said immediately. "Let's do it." The time had come to take the battle beyond Crestview's walls, to a stage where truth, not politics, would prevail. The injustice was real. The tension was building. But Malik Jackson wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. The manuscript sat on the dining room table like a beacon. "You ready?" she asked softly. Malik nodded. "Ready." That evening, with Dr. Patel's guidance, they submitted the paper to the prestigious Journal of Advanced Mathematics, a publication respected worldwide. It wasn't a casual blog post. It wasn't a university forum. This was the real thing, peer-reviewed, scholarly, public. If accepted, no one, not even Eleanor Whitmore, could dismiss it. After hitting send, Malik felt a strange stillness settle over him. The work was done, at least for now. All he could do was wait. The waiting was harder than the math. Days stretched into weeks. At school, Malik tried to focus on his classes, but the undercurrent of tension was always there. His classmates still buzzed with talk of the symposium, though the headlines had quieted. "You think they're going to publish it?" his best friend Jamal asked during lunch. Malik shrugged. "Hope so." He didn't tell Jamal about the professors who doubted him, the whispers on campus, or the subtle dismissals. He didn't want pity. He wanted victory. Meanwhile, on the Crestview campus, pressure was mounting. Dr. Patel's submission of the manuscript had triggered a ripple effect. Word spread quickly among the mathematics faculty. Some professors were intrigued, even supportive. Others were quietly furious, and none more so than Eleanor Whitmore. In her private office she paced, a copy of Malik's paper in hand. The more she read, the harder it was to find fault. The logic held. The methodology was sound. The clarity remarkable, especially for someone so young. Yet the thought of that paper being published, validating a 12-year-old's work on her impossible problem, gnawed at her. She composed email after email to trusted colleagues. "The paper lacks maturity," she wrote. "Promising, but incomplete in understanding." She suggested delays, further reviews, and endless scrutiny, anything to slow its ascent. But forces outside Crestview were gathering. When the journal's editorial board convened to review the submission, it wasn't just Malik's paper that drew their attention. It was the story behind it. A young black student solving an unsolved problem? The human interest alone demanded a fair hearing. Dr. Patel, sensing the importance of the moment, rallied allies from other universities. He called in favors. Colleagues at MIT, Stanford, and Howard agreed to review the paper independently. One by one, the reports came back. The proof was valid. It wasn't flawless. No first paper was undeniable. In a matter of weeks, the journal's editorial board voted unanimously. They would publish it. The acceptance email arrived on a crisp Friday afternoon. Malik was in math class when the notification popped up on his phone. His breath caught. He raised his hand. "Mrs. Horace, may I step outside for a second?" In the hallway, heart pounding, he read the email again and again. "We are pleased to inform you that your paper has been accepted for publication in the upcoming issue of the Journal of Advanced Mathematics." He couldn't believe it. He sprinted to the main office and called his mom at work. "Mama," he said breathlessly, "they're publishing it." On the other end, his mother gasped, "Baby, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you." Word spread fast. Dr. Patel called that evening, his voice full of joy. "You did it, Malik. They can't ignore you now." At Crestview, however, the news landed like a thunderclap. Whitmore read the journal's announcement through gritted teeth. There it was, in black and white for the whole academic world to see. The young author, Malik Jackson, presents an elegant and novel solution to a long-standing mathematical problem. It was being shared on social media, in math circles, on academic forums. Her name wasn't mentioned, not once. The spotlight now belonged to the boy she had dismissed. Still, Whitmore wasn't finished. She convened an emergency meeting of the department heads. "We must issue our statement," she declared. "Contextualize this situation. The university's reputation is at stake," but cracks were forming even within her loyal ranks. Some professors were tired of the politics. Others, genuinely impressed by Malik's work, began to question her motives. Dr. Patel, emboldened, argued forcefully. We should be celebrating this achievement, not undermining it. The debate raged late into the evening. Meanwhile, Malik's story spread beyond the academic world. Local news stations caught wind of it. Reporters reached out for interviews. His school held an assembly in his honor. The headlines now read, "12-year-old solves impossible math problem. Even professor said it couldn't be done." One night, after a television crew filmed a segment at their home, Malik sat on the front porch with his mom. The summer air was warm, filled with the hum of crickets. "Mama," he said quietly, "do you think Professor Whitmore's mad?" His mother looked at him, her eyes kind but fierce. "Maybe," she said. "But that's her problem. You did the work. You earned this. Don't let anyone tell you different." Malik nodded, gazing up at the stars. He felt proud, but also restless. Something told him the battle wasn't quite over. The tides were turning. The injustice had been exposed. But the final redemption? That moment had yet to come. The news of Malik's published paper spread faster than anyone at Crestview could have imagined. Within a week of its appearance in the Journal of Advanced Mathematics, academic blogs were buzzing. Social media caught fire, comment threads filled with admiration and debate. Headlines multiplied. "Genius 12-year-old proves math professors wrong. Child prodigy stuns university elites. Impossible no more." At Martin Luther King Middle School, Malik had become something of a legend. Reporters showed up outside the school gates, cameras rolling as he arrived each morning. Some of his classmates begged for his autograph. Teachers from other schools emailed to ask if Malik would give talks. He was polite but cautious. Dr. Patel had warned him, "Stay grounded. Fame fades. The math will always be there." Malik took the advice to heart. He kept up with his schoolwork, attended math club, and worked quietly on new problems in the evenings. But on Crestview's campus, the atmosphere was far from calm. Inside the mathematics department, the mood was tense. Almost combative, now found herself under a glaring spotlight. Colleagues whispered in corridors. Visiting faculty asked awkward questions. "What's this I hear about a middle schooler solving your problem?" one senior professor inquired. Whitmore's answers grew increasingly defensive. It was never formally unsolvable. The proof requires further validation. The journal was. Some had reviewed Malik's published work and couldn't deny its brilliance. Others, tired of the growing scandal, began distancing themselves from Whitmore's circle. And then came an unexpected blow. The Mathematics Society of North America, one of the field's most prestigious organizations, announced that Malik Jackson would receive their Young Scholars Award, presented annually to promising talents in mathematical research. The award was typically reserved for graduate students or young postdocs, not middle schoolers. And yet the selection committee had voted unanimously. The ceremony would be held in just 2 weeks at the Society's annual conference, hosted ironically at Crestview University. When news of the award broke, Malik's mother received a formal letter inviting her and Malik to attend as honored guests. She read the letter 3 times in disbelief before calling Dr. Patel. "He's being honored at Crestview?" she asked. "Right under Whitmore's nose?" Dr. Patel chuckled. "It's poetic, isn't it?" But not everyone was smiling. In her office, Professor Whitmore stared at the invitation email with cold fury. To have Malik paraded in front of the mathematic elite on her own campus was intolerable. She had worked her entire career building her reputation, her authority, and now it was being overshadowed by a child. She called an emergency meeting with several department heads. "We must control the optics of this event," she insisted. "I propose we issue an official statement clarifying the department's position on this so-called solution." But cracks in her power were widening. Some faculty, wearied by the controversy, pushed back. "Perhaps it's time to acknowledge the achievement," one senior professor said carefully. "After all, the journal's review was thorough." "We cannot legitimize amateurism," Whitmore snapped. "If we do, we invite chaos." Still, the tide was against her. Word spread that Malik would be attending the award ceremony. Reporters and mathematicians from across the country began booking travel. A feature article appeared in Scientific American, "The Boy Who Solved the Impossible Problem." Through it all, Malik remained steady. He read the articles, answered interview questions politely, and, under Dr. Patel's mentorship, began preparing for the biggest moment of his young life, standing on stage at the mathematics conference. The days passed swiftly. On the morning of the ceremony, Malik awoke early. His mom had bought him a new navy suit, crisp white shirt, and a pair of shiny black shoes. "You look so handsome," she said proudly, brushing a bit of lint from his jacket. Molly grinned, nerves fluttering in his stomach. "You think I'll do okay?" She knelt to straighten his tie. "Baby, you've already done it. Just go be you." At Crestview's grand auditorium, the conference buzzed with excitement. The who's who of the mathematics world filled the hall: professors, researchers, journalists. Cameras lined the back row. When Malik and his mother entered, escorted by Dr. Patel, a ripple of whispers swept the room. Many turned to watch the small, poised boy make his way down the aisle. Meanwhile, at the front row, Professor Whitmore sat rigid, her face a mask of composed indifference. But her eyes burned. The ceremony began. The Society's president gave a brief speech on the importance of nurturing young talent in mathematics. Then, with a warm smile, he announced, "And now, the Young Scholars Award goes to Malik." Applause filled the hall, some polite, some genuinely enthusiastic. Malik rose, heart pounding, and made his way to the stage. The spotlight was blinding. He took the podium, hands steady on the edges. The room quieted. "Thank you," he began, voice clear and calm. "I didn't set out to prove anyone wrong. I just love math. When I saw the problem, I wanted to understand it, and when I started working on it, the numbers showed me the way." He paused, eyes scanning the audience. "I'm grateful for everyone who believed in me, especially Dr. Patel and my mom, and I hope this shows that talent can come from anywhere. You don't have to be a professor, you don't have to be grown. You just have to love what you do." A beat of silence. Then a wave of applause, louder this time, filled the room. From her seat, Whitmore watched, stone-faced. Around her, colleagues clapped, some rising to their feet. The boy had won them over. No amount of dismissal could change what was unfolding in front of her, and as Malik accepted his award, shaking hands with dignitaries, the realization hit her: the tides had turned. Her authority, once unassailable, was now in question. The battle was reaching its climax, and even as Malik smiled for cameras and accepted congratulations, he sensed it too. The storm had gathered. The true reckoning was coming. The ceremony had ended, but the buzz of excitement lingered in the air like an electrical charge. Clusters of attendees surrounded Malik, shaking his hand, offering congratulations, and asking for copies of his published paper. Reporters snapped photos. Academics leaned in to speak with his mother and Dr. Patel. Malik smiled graciously through it all, though his heart was still racing from the moment on stage. He had done it. He had stood before the mathematics elite and earned their applause. But even as joy swelled in his chest, Malik could feel another presence watching. Cool, sharp, unyielding. Professor Eleanor Whitmore. Across the auditorium, Whitmore remained seated long after most of her peers had risen. Her arms crossed tightly over her chest, her sharp blue eyes fixed on Malik as if by sheer will she could undo the moment that had just passed. Several colleagues approached her, murmuring polite congratulations or neutral comments about the ceremony. She acknowledged them stiffly, offering tight-lipped replies. In her mind, the humiliation played on loop. A 12-year-old black boy had been honored on her campus for solving her impossible problem. At last, unable to bear the scene any longer, Whitmore rose, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor as she made her way toward the exit. But fate had other plans. Just as she reached the corridor, she came face to face with Malik and Dr. Patel. They had been stepping out for some air, Malik still clutching his award in one hand. For a brief moment, all three stood frozen in place. Dr. Patel was first to speak, his tone polite but laced with firm undercurrents. "Professor Whitmore," he said evenly, "a remarkable day for Crestview, wouldn't you say?" Whitmore's smile was brittle. "Indeed," she replied coolly. Her gaze flicked to Malik, then back to Patel. "Though one might wish for more scholarly restraint in such matters." Malik met her eyes without flinching. "The journal reviewed it carefully," he said quietly. "It passed peer review." His voice was calm, not boastful, simply stating a fact. Whitmore's smile tightened further. "Yes, an intriguing curiosity," she said. "But one proof does not make a mathematician. There is much he still lacks." Her words hung in the air, a pointed dismissal masked as academic critique. Dr. Patel's expression hardened. "Perhaps," he replied, "but no one in that hall today could deny the brilliance of his work." He glanced at Malik. "Nor the clarity of his thinking." A long silence stretched between them. Around them a few passers-by lingered, sensing the tension. Malik spoke again, softly but with quiet strength. "I know I still have a lot to learn, Professor, but today wasn't about being perfect. It was about solving the problem." He lifted his award slightly. "And it's solved." There was no arrogance in his tone, only truth. Whitmore's eyes flashed, her composure threatening to crack, but she forced a tight nod. "Enjoy your moment," she said. "Fame is fleeting. Real mastery takes decades." Without another word, she turned and swept down the hall, her heels clicking into the distance. Dr. Patel let out a slow breath, watching her retreat. "She's rattled," he murmured. Malik looked up at him. "Will she try to stop me?" Patel smiled faintly. "She's already tried, and failed." Malik's mother joined them then, wrapping an arm around her son's shoulder. "Come on, baby," she said gently. "Let's go celebrate." They stepped out into the warm afternoon sun, leaving the cold marble halls of Crestview behind, for now. But inside Whitmore's mind, new plans were already forming. She would not allow this to stand unchallenged. The next morning, an internal memo circulated among the mathematics faculty. While we acknowledge the enthusiasm surrounding recent events, the department must maintain its high standards of academic rigor. We will be convening a formal symposium to critically examine the methodologies involved. Attendance is expected. The tone was unmistakable. A veiled attempt to reassert control, to cast doubt on Malik's achievement, to reclaim her authority. Dr. Patel read the memo and sighed. "She's not giving up," he told Malik and his mother. "She's calling a symposium, another one, but this time it's a challenge." Malik nodded slowly. "Then I'll be ready." They began preparing at once. Malik reviewed every step of his proof again and again. Dr. Patel coached him on how to handle tough questions, how to stay calm under scrutiny. Support poured in from other universities, professors who had reviewed his paper and now offered words of encouragement. Malik's mother, ever watchful, kept him grounded. "Just be yourself, baby. You know the math. Let him see it." The day of the symposium arrived swiftly. Crestview's largest lecture hall filled with faculty, graduate students, visiting mathematicians, and a contingent of journalists eager to witness the next chapter of the unfolding drama. At the front sat Professor Whitmore, regal and composed, her loyal students flanking her. The stakes were clear. This was her attempt to reclaim the narrative, to cast Malik as an overhyped amateur, his solution as fragile under true scrutiny. Malik entered the hall with Dr. Patel and his mother by his side. He carried no fanfare, just his notebook and quiet determination. The murmurs began at once. "That's him, the boy who solved it. Let's see what happens now." The moderator called the session to order. Whitmore rose, voice cool and precise. "Today we gather to examine the methodologies behind recent claims. Let us proceed with scholarly rigor." She gestured to Malik. "Mr. Jackson, the floor is yours." Maliki stepped forward. The massive chalkboard loomed before him. He looked out over the sea of faces, some supportive, others skeptical. Taking a steady breath, he began. "Thank you for letting me speak," he said. "I'm here to show the work, not the headlines. The math speaks for itself." He turned to the board and began to write. Line by line, he built the proof again, clear, methodical, precise. He anticipated objections, addressed common pitfalls, and explained every transformation. The room watched in rapt silence. Even Whitmore's sharp gaze faltered as the logic unfolded flawlessly before her. When Malik finished, A moment of breathless quiet filled the hall. Then questions came sharp, probing, relentless. Malik answered each calmly, thoughtfully. The training with Dr. Patel paid off. He remained unshaken. The tide shifted again. Supportive voices rose. His grasp of the material is extraordinary. The method is sound. There's no fault here. By the time the symposium ended, the verdict was clear, even among Whitmore's peers. The boy had won, not by charm or media hype, but by sheer mathematical mastery. As the crowd dispersed, Whitmore remained seated, her expression unreadable. The battle she had waged so fiercely had been lost, not to another professor, but to a boy she had dismissed. The room no longer looked to her for authority. They looked to Malik. And Malik, he walked out of that hall not with arrogance but with quiet pride. The math had spoken, the truth had prevailed, and the world at last was beginning to listen. The aftermath of the symposium rippled through the halls of Crestview University like an unstoppable current. For weeks afterward, the event was all anyone in the mathematics department could talk about. In the faculty lounge, over coffee cups and academic journals, even the most skeptical professors now acknowledged the truth they had witnessed firsthand. Malik Jackson's solution was no fluke. The boy possessed a rare mathematical gift, one that could not be denied. Outside the university, the story continued to grow. National newspapers picked it up. 12-year-old outsmarts university mathematicians. Educational think tanks circulated articles about nurturing young talent. On social media, Malik's name trended in academic circles, sparking debates about access, race, and the barriers young black students faced in elite institutions. Malik's inbox overflowed with... But through it all, Malik remained steady, focused. At home, his mother kept him grounded. Fame is nice, baby, she reminded him, but remember, stay true to yourself. Keep doing the work, that's what matters. And Malik did. He still attended classes at Martin Luther King Middle School and still worked quietly at the kitchen table each night. But now, thanks to Dr. Patel's connections, he also attended weekly seminars with advanced mathematicians from around the country, virtually or in person. The boy who had once snuck into a lecture hall unnoticed was now welcomed as a colleague. Yet not everyone embraced this new reality. In her office, Professor Eleanor Whitmore sat before her computer, rereading yet another glowing article about Malik. Each word was a fresh wound. The symposium had not only failed to discredit the boy, it had elevated him further. Invitations to prestigious conferences had begun flowing to Malik. His paper was now being cited in other works. Younger faculty members at Crestview looked up to him. Some even questioned Whitmore's leadership, quietly, for now, but the shift was palpable. Her authority had eroded. And the worst part? There was no argument left to stand on. The math was sound. The problem was solved. Whitmore had staked her reputation on the impossibility of this problem, and now, in every corner of the academic world, her name was attached to the narrative, not as a pioneer, but as the figure who had declared the shame was quiet but suffocating. In an attempt to salvage some dignity, she drafted a statement to the university's academic board, proposing a formal acknowledgement of Malik's achievement, framed, of course, to highlight the university's role in fostering such talent. But when the draft circulated, faculty pushed back. "Let's not rewrite history," one professor emailed bluntly. "We all saw how he was treated. It was clear the university's leadership no longer moved at her command." Meanwhile, Malik was preparing for his next big moment. The National Youth Mathematics Conference had invited him to deliver the keynote address, a rare honor even for seasoned academics. The conference, held in Washington, D.C., would draw educators, scholars, and students from across the country. Dr. Patel helped him craft the talk. "This is your chance to speak to the next generation," he said. "Tell your story, inspire them." The night before the conference, Malik sat in his hotel room, notebook in hand. His mother sat nearby, watching him practice. "You ready, baby?" she asked. Malik nodded. "Yeah, Mama, I think I am." The next morning, the grand ballroom of the conference center was filled with hundreds of attendees. When Malik took the stage, the room erupted in applause. He stood before the crowd, a slender boy in a crisp suit, clutching a simple notebook. "Thank you for having me," he began, voice clear and strong. "I'm not here because I'm special. I'm here because someone gave me a chance. Because I love math. And because even when people told me I wasn't ready or didn't belong, I kept going." He paused, scanning the faces before him, young students, teachers, professors. "I learned that talent can come from anywhere, and that sometimes the hardest part isn't solving the problem, it's getting people to listen." The room fell into a reverent hush. Malik continued, sharing his journey, the challenges he had faced, and the joy he found in the beauty of mathematics. He spoke with honesty and heart, never once mentioning names, but everyone in that room knew the weight of what he was saying. When he finished, the standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes. Reporters flooded him with questions afterward. Professors lined up to shake his hand. And in that moment, Malik Jackson was no longer simply the boy who solved the impossible problem. He was a voice, a symbol of what was possible when barriers were broken. Back at Crestview, Professor Whitmore watched footage of the speech on her computer, alone in her office. The applause echoed from her speakers, relentless. She clicked pause, but the sound remained in her mind. The turning point had come. She could resist no longer. The academic world had moved on, past her doubts, past her authority. Malik Jackson had earned his place, and no amount of bitterness could change that now. The weeks that followed Malik's keynote speech brought a wave of change across the academic landscape and right into the heart of Crestview University. The Mathematics Society's official newsletter released a full feature on Malik, praising his clarity of thought, the elegance of his proof, and his poise in the face of public scrutiny. Peer journals followed suit, many referencing Malik's paper as the authoritative solution to the problem once dubbed impossible. It was no longer just a story of a talented boy. It was becoming a pivotal moment in modern mathematics. Other universities began inviting Malik and Dr. Patel to collaborative seminars. Institutions from as far as Europe and Asia requested translated versions of Malik's paper. Even the International Mathematical Union sent a letter of recognition. The weight of these accolades shifted the conversation within Crestview's halls. Faculty members who had once hesitated now openly acknowledged Malik's brilliance. Several professors expressed regret, some publicly, about their initial skepticism. For Malik, life remained astonishingly normal in many ways. He still helped his mom with chores, still walked to school with his friends, and spent evenings lost in number. But every so often, a letter or email arrived from someone he'd never imagined, a top researcher, a field medalist, a director of a famous institute, praising his work and inviting collaboration. Malik took it all in stride. He loved math. The rest was noise. But one final piece remained unresolved. Professor Eleanor Whitmore. She had maintained a strained silence through it all, speaking as little as possible about Malik's success. Her lectures remained well attended, but the students now whispered of the symposium, the standing ovation, the power shift. Once the unchallenged center of Crestview's mathematical world, Whitmore now found herself overshadowed. But the pressure to publicly acknowledge Malik's achievement continued to mount. Alumni were writing letters. The university's board began to press for a formal statement. "It reflects on all of us," the dean told her pointedly in a private meeting. "You must do something. This can't remain an open wound." Whitmore fought her pride. To stand before her peers, before the boy who had proven her wrong, it went against everything she had built her career upon. Yet in her private moments, even she could no longer deny the truth. Malik Jackson had done what she believed impossible. Her refusal to acknowledge it would only erode her standing further. It was time. A formal event was arranged, a department lecture honoring new directions in mathematical thought, with Malik invited as guest speaker. The subtext was clear. This was Whitmore's opportunity to acknowledge the achievement that had reshaped the department. The auditorium buzzed with anticipation. Faculty, students, journalists, and visiting scholars packed the hall. Malik, dressed in a sharp navy suit, sat calmly beside Dr. Patel and his mother. Professor Whitmore entered to a wave of whispers. Her usual sharp elegance was there, but something softer had crept into her posture. She took the podium. "Colleagues, students, honored guests," she began, her voice steady but subdued. "Mathematics is a pursuit of truth, a truth that belongs to no one person, no one institution. It is a field where the beauty of logic and discovery transcends ego and pride." She paused, her gaze sweeping the room. Then, with deliberate clarity, "We have witnessed a remarkable moment in our field. A young scholar, Mr. Malik Jackson, has brought forward a solution to a problem long held as unsolvable, and though I initially harbored doubt," she took a breath, "I stand before you today to acknowledge that his work is sound, original, and worthy of the highest respect." A hush fell over the audience. Whitmore continued, "More than that, Mr. Jackson has reminded us that genius knows no age, no pedigree. We as an academic community must do better to recognize and nurture such talent, wherever it may arise." She stepped back from the podium, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. The applause began softly, then swelled into a standing ovation, not just for Whitmore's words, but for Malik himself. He rose, modest but proud, and approached the podium as Whitmore gestured toward him. For a moment the two stood side by side, opposites in so many ways, yet bound now by the truth of the mathematics that connected them. Malik spoke briefly, with his characteristic humility. "Thank you, Professor Whitmore, for your words," he said, "and thank you to everyone here who helped me along the way. I'm still learning. I hope to always keep learning." The applause that followed was thunderous. No longer an outsider, Malik Jackson had been fully embraced, not through concession, but through triumph. The acknowledgement was complete. Later, after the event, Whitmore approached Malik and his mother privately. Her manner was less formal, more human. "I was wrong to dismiss you," she admitted, voice quiet. "You've earned my respect." Malik nodded, accepting the words with grace. "Thank you, Professor." It was not an apology in so many words, but it was enough. The barriers had fallen. The battle had been won, not through bitterness, but through brilliance, perseverance, and undeniable truth. As Malik and his mother walked home that evening beneath a sky full of stars, she wrapped her arm around his shoulder. "You did it, baby," she whispered. "And I'm just getting started." Summer had settled over the city, long days stretching into warm evenings. At Martin Luther King Middle School the halls were quieter now, the school year drawing to a close. Malik Jackson's name was still spoken in every classroom, though he remained the same calm, steady presence he had always been. He finished his final exams, helped clean out the math club's storage room, and still spent hours at the kitchen table, notebook open, solving new problems that sparked in his mind. But something had changed. The world beyond his school, the world of mathematics, had opened wide for him. Letters arrived almost daily now. A professor from Cambridge invited him to a summer institute. An advanced mathematics program at MIT offered him a special scholarship. Private donors offered to fund whatever educational path Malik chose to pursue. His published paper was being cited internationally. His mother watched it all with pride and a little disbelief. "All this," she would whisper at the table in the evenings, "because you just kept going." Malik would smile. He knew better than anyone that the math had always been there. It was the world that had finally started to listen. One June morning a letter came that made even Drapa Patel blink in surprise. The Fields Academy for Mathematical Excellence, a renowned institution for gifted students, offered Malik a place, full scholarship, mentorship, housing, and access to resources beyond anything they had imagined. Malik read the letter 3 times. "What do you think?" Dr. Patel asked. Malik looked at his mother. She smiled through tears. "Baby, you know I'll miss you like crazy, but if this is what you want, it's yours to take." Malik nodded. "I want to keep learning." A farewell event was held at the community center. Neighbors, teachers, friends, and local leaders gathered to celebrate Malik. The city's mayor presented him with a special commendation. His math teacher, Mrs. Harris, spoke with tears in her eyes. "Malik taught us all something bigger than math," she said. "He taught us about perseverance, about courage, and about the power of believing in yourself." When Malik rose to speak, he looked out at the faces of his community, the people who had known him since he was a little boy counting sidewalk cracks and spotting patterns in street signs. "I want to say thank you," he began, "for believing in me when others didn't, for helping me keep going." He paused, voice strong. "And for all the kids out there who love something, even if no one sees it yet. Don't stop. Keep going. One day the world will catch up." Reporters captured every word. Meanwhile, at Crestview University, a quieter shift was taking place. Professor Whitmore, though still proud, now carried herself with a measure of humility that hadn't been there before. Her lectures included new sections on the importance of challenging assumptions and embracing contributions from all voices, no matter their age or background. The department as a whole had begun inviting younger students from across the city to attend open math workshops, an effort led by Dr. Patel and quietly supported, at last, by Whitmore herself. In the greater mathematics community, Malik's story sparked initiatives for broader outreach, programs to find and nurture talent in underserved schools, scholarships to break down barriers. The night before Malik was to leave for the Fields Academy, he sat on the front steps of their apartment building beside his mother, the two of them watching the stars. "You nervous?" she asked softly. Malik shrugged. "A little," he admitted. "It's all new." She squeezed his hand. "Just remember, you've already shown the world what you can do, and no matter where you go, no matter how big the place, you belong there." Malik looked up at the stars, countless, infinite. He smiled. "I know, Mama, and there's so much more I want to learn." The next morning, bags packed, notebooks under one arm, Malik stepped onto the bus that would take him to the academy. He waved as his mother stood watching, pride shining in her eyes. As the bus pulled away, Malik opened his notebook to a blank page. New equations were already forming in his mind, new challenges, new possibilities. The legacy was just beginning. The boy who had once been dismissed as too young, too unqualified, and as he rode toward a future wide open with promise, one truth remained clear as the numbers that danced in his mind. He was just getting started. Dear friend, this story reminds us, brilliance knows no age, no background, no privilege. How many young minds are overlooked simply because they don't fit the expected mold? Let's make sure that talent, wherever it shines, is nurtured, not dismissed. If Malik's journey inspired you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel so together we can keep bringing stories like this to light, because every young voice deserves a chance to be heard.